Shalom, all praises to the Most High, all praises to His holy name. Praise Heavenly Father. Anoki said, in the name of Yahweh. Well, I had some, and Most High said the same, I'll still share them, that I prepared for a lesson for the day. But I was listening to Elder Ayil, and this is nothing bad about Elder Ayil. I'm just listening to him teach today. And he used the word Lamanite and associated with the term Negro. So while he's teaching, I said, well, I've taught a lesson similar to that before myself. But I use the term Negro that they use for a byword, and I replaced it by our coming out of the wilderness term, American Israelite, who we really are. But all the time I was thinking, since he's using the term Negro, I can't speak for him. But in my mind, I thought, well, he was probably trying to just give you a relation to that who that Lamanite was according to their terms. So he said he used Negro. But on the other hand, I said that was a byword, or just a term, but I use it for the coming out of the wilderness as American Israelite, who we really are in the kingdom. So then while he was teaching, I said, I wonder if there's any information about the origins of that term Negro. Something I can use tangible to teach a lesson on. And guess what? I came up with what appears to be a jewel. I just researched the term for Negro, or origin of the term Negro PDF. And I came up with something. I have not read it all. I'm gonna read it here for you. I kind of glanced over it a little bit, but I'm gonna read the document and see what it says while I'm teaching you. Like I always tell you, study to show yourself approved. Because the Most High has already laid a foundation of who we are. He said, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, study to show yourself approved. He said, then I will hear you from heaven. He said, I will forgive your sin of calling yourself a Negro and all these other terms outside of my name that I gave you. And then I'll heal your land. So I'm going to go back to this book here as a reference to the document I just discovered on the internet. So let's go to, this is Revealing America's Dark-Skinned Past, Volume 2, The Columbian Era, The Red Silver Fox Thunderbird. Page, I'm going to go from Of course, I showed you this image before. This is Anaconda. Anaconda. A beautiful sister. You see her walking down the street every day. It says, the house where Anaconda and the chiefs were. Golden flower, Anaconda. That was her, I guess that's what she is, the golden flower. But she's very beautiful. That's why I just showed her image. I'm going to start off on page 49. They seem to show up in the slave markets as Negroes. Over the course of Columbus' 4 journeys to newly found territory, a once populous island that was rich with natural beauty and resources was now virtually depopulated. Some managed to escape by boats to the surrounding islands. And I'm sure because its close proximity to the mainland United States. Those inhabitants who remained were doomed to a life of deplorable slavery, where there was no escape or hope for the future. Made me want to go back to one of the books of remembrance about our ancestor Joseph. So let's do that. That same term was used for him. The first Aki. This is the book of remembrance of the first and second book of Aki, a book of remembrance. Actually calls itself the sealed portion. This is an extension of the sealed portion. So first Aki, or the sealed portion, book of our ancient book of remembrance of the sealed portion. Put it that way. Let's go chapter 3. And of course, like I told you, this wasn't on my mind because I didn't know nothing about this until a few minutes ago. I just happened to, maybe, I ain't gonna know, maybe two of the Holy Spirit sent me there. Because this wasn't even on my mind. I had a whole different lesson to come that I thought I was gonna teach right now. First Aki, chapter 3 and 111. And thus was Joseph taken bound into the land of a far country. And he was handled like unto one of their cattle, having no hope of rescue. That sounds like it's the same thing in this book right here. Back to Revealing America's Dark Skin Past, volume 2. Page 49. Over the course of Columbus' 4 journeys to the newly found territory, a once populous island that was rich with natural beauty and resources was now virtually depopulated. Some managed to escape by boats to the surrounding islands. I'm sure because its close proximity to the mainland United States. Those inhabitants who remained were doomed to a life of deplorable slavery, where there was no escape or hope for the future. Same thing sound like our ancestor Joseph. Now I got to go here then. See, they've always talking about DNA and all these things. No. The blood of our ancestors is crying out. That's our DNA. Revealing our past, present, and future to us through the sealed books. The sealed portion, chapter 12 and 55, for it suffices me to say that we are descendants of Joseph. That's all. This information proves who we are. Those inhabitants who remained were doomed to a life of deplorable slavery, where there was no escape or hope for the future. By the early 1500s, the demographics of the islands was changing, and the need for slaves were increasing, in part because of the population of Hispaniola, but also because the Europeans were venturing to other parts of the Americas and setting up settlements. The workers for these settlements became indigenous people. Over time, slave raiding, kidnapping became the standard to obtain these workers. At the 1510 Spanish slave raiding reached out increasingly towards the outer inlet islands of the Caribbean and the adjacent mainlands. Much of the raiding was designed to meet the labor needs of Haiti, where the native population was being greatly reduced. With numerous Spanish expeditions captured native, in brackets, Americans. It says captured Americans, but in brackets it said native. That's why I told you all the time, I'm an American Israelite. Israelite and American, the same thing. From the house of Joseph, the tribe of Ephraim, who were taken to Spain. By the 1520s, slave raiding in Florida and Carolina coast areas was common also. Listen to knowledge. It said Florida was really. One lady said she woke up one day, it was Florida, woke up the next day, it was Louisiana. Page 51, dark-skinned people of the Americas. I just had a flashback. I remember when I used to work at the airport. The international, where Tom Bradley used to be married. And guess who I saw before she passed away? Sitting there looking at me. Florida Evans. That popped in my head. She was actually sitting there on the bench looking at me like she knew. In any case, that's not her name, but that's her name on that show, Good Time. In any case, between the years of 1492 and 1501, at least 3,000 Native Americans were known to be shipped to Europe, with the likely total being possible double that. Most were sent to the Seville area, where they seemed to show up in the slave market as Negroes. What most people don't realize is Negro was a terminology that was used to describe the indigenous people of the Americas. Up into the 17th century, terminologies that were used to describe people were of a non-racial origin because one's appearance as a means of identification and specification was more significant than their racial ideology. Therefore, Webster said these people was copper colored. The Book of Remembrance says they was dark brown like me. Anyone with a dark complexion, regardless of their country of origin, was called Negro. And also with the misnomer Indian, this is the term misnomer, because we're trying to get to the source of who we are. We already know that. But I'm just using terminologies based on what's in the information. Misnomers are now mid-15th century in law, an era, and a name. See? Either our brother who's on the internet being ignorant is still trying to make us a non-factor. They say, well, okay, we found out now we're not a Negro, we're not thieves, that's just terminology, but you should be calling yourself Indian. Either they're working for the enemy or they still ignorant. Because although Indian is a term that still describes us based on their information, but it's a misnomer, it's an error in the name. Mistaken identification of an accused or convicted person. You just the same old nigga by another name. From Anglo-French, Old French misnomer, a misname, a wrongly named, now used of infinite From mes wrongly, see miss plus nomer to name. Nominate. I nominate you the same as a nigga. I'm just gonna call you Indian. Nigga. That's my nigga. From now, use of French infinitives, see waiver. Meaning act of applying a wrong name or designation. It's from 1630s. Also from mid-15th century. Let's get back to the read. Okay. Anyone with a dark complexion, regardless of their country of origin, was called Negro, and along with the misnomer, Indian. Negro was used also to define the indigenous people. We make a huge mistake when we apply 21st century sensibilities to terminologies that were created in the past. See, that's what the Most High said. Stop all the foolishness and come back to me. Call by the name I gave you. First Kings 6:13, and I will dwell among the children of Israel, and I will not forsake my people Israel. He didn't say nothing about Negro, Indian, and all these other people, even though they're describing us. So they stop playing games with it. Just be called what I called you. Ezekiel 25:14, and I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel. They should do in Edom according to my anger and according to my fury. They should know my vengeance, says Yahweh God. Ezekiel 39:7, so will I make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel. That's the only way you're going to know his holy name. Because he only in the midst of his people Israel, by the name he calls. And I will not let them pollute my holy name anymore. By Negro, Indian, African American, all these things that people call you. That you call yourself. And the heathen shall know that I am Yahweh, the Holy One of Israel. Second Samuel 7:24, for you have confirmed to yourself your people Israel to be a people unto you forever. And you, Yahweh, are become their God. I thought he was already Israel's God. No, because we didn't know who he was. We thought it was Negroes, African Americans, Indians. We got people that's want to convince us. They sound impressive. No, you are Indian. Same old nigga. Although it describes who you are as being Aboriginal indigenous to this land, but the Most High said, ain't nothing going to move and shake for you until you call by the name I gave you. Then I'll hear you. Second Chronicles 6:6. But I've chosen Jerusalem, and they even know that the inheritance can't come to you unless you were called by one of the tribes he called you to. It's already set up. He said he already prepared the way, and they already know this in the treasury. They set up the treasury for the elect. For the wicked has stored up wealth for the righteous. 2 Chronicles 6:6. But I've chosen Jerusalem that my name might be there. This is the New Jerusalem right here in North America. And I've chosen David to be over my people Israel. So ain't no need for you talking about you, David. He already chose David to be over his people Israel. He know David is through the bloodline for this day. The one that's bringing you information like he said. Just like he said it. Talking about the Melchizedek priesthood. Michael, or who can be called Michael. Jeremiah 31:1. That's why Michael got to stand up for his people. Michael is standing up. Jeremiah 31:1. At the same time, says Yahweh, I will be the God of all the families of Israel, and they should be my people. Back to page 52 of this book here. Anyone with a dark complexion, regardless of their country of origin. See, his people are sent everywhere. But if you're a Negro, according to their terms, and particularly if you come to know that you're the children of Israel, if he woke you up, this book is information that's telling you what's called Negro, and along with the misnomer Indian, they're synonymous, Negro and Indian. Both of them mean the same nigga, who they treat like a criminal. Same as being black, same thing. Negro was also used to define the indigenous people. We make a huge mistake when we apply 21st century sensibilities to terminologies that were created in the past. That's why they give you 21st century sensibilities, to try to change the truth of the past. Try to create a new lying future. Satan lies. I taught on that yesterday. His illusion of grandeur. He just tried to change definitions. Try to change the truth, the lie into the truth. Or try to change the truth into lies and make that your new truth. Negro was also used to define the indigenous people. That's why I was trying to say this truth, but others get offended. If your father, I'm using the term, if your father was a Negro, no matter what the children look like, based on who the father had children by, talking about the women, that child is still a Negro. But the Most High said, no, that child is an Israelite. That's the one I'm going to hear. Called by my name. On this land, that child is American Israelite. We make a huge mistake when we apply 21st century sensibilities to terminologies that were created in the past. I'm going to come back there. But let me go back to the beginning of the book. In the introduction. page 8 till I stop. The misconceptions that permeate American history, especially United States history, are so numerous and abundant that when people are presented with historical facts that deviate from the customary perceptions, they have a tendency to dismiss the information as another conspiracy theory. The old stories, from the discovery of the New World to the colonization of the United States, are filled with so many fallacies, falsehoods, lies, that the retelling of these over the centuries has turned these fictions into truths, these lies into the truth. The misrepresentations of previous historical writings have become today's realities of the past. Not realizing that history has become, using the word of Napoleon, the words of Napoleon, a myth that men agree to believe. That he said they're Confederate against you. They made these lies and they sticking to it. But now he's making them tell the truth by necessity. He said, because every tongue shall confess, and every knee shall bow. One of the most prevalent fallacies in North American history is the story surrounding Christopher Columbus and the people he encountered. It's interesting to note that early 20th century histories was stating that Christopher Columbus was trying to prove that the world was round. However, late 19th century historical writings on Columbus, not school textbooks, in parentheses, make no mention of this revelation. They do, however, tell in great detail of the carnage that took place on the islands during Columbus' reign. They also describe in detail the hospitableness of the indigenous people, the general nature of the indigenous people until they had to defend themselves, in parentheses, and that the indigenous people were considered Negroes. Eventually, in the retelling of this story, as history has tendency to do, facts were being deleted. In parentheses, the man who changed modern history could not be depicted as a slaver, amongst other things. And most of all, the image of the indigenous people and the words and names used to describe them had to be changed to accommodate the European interests and values. Back to page 52. There were many terms in many different languages that were utilized to define the people of color here in the United States. Many times these terms meaning changed over time. Some terms like Pardo, Loro, Preto, Moreno, just to mention a few, were all terms used to define people of a dark complexion that have since become obsolete. Even the term brown, as used to define people, is not used in the same manner it was used in the 1600s. See, now they done darken the screen because they don't want to hear this. These devils, everything these devils stand for can't stand the truth. Even the terminology brown, as used to define people, is not used in the same manner it was used in the 1600s. In actual practice, English brown was originally very dark color. Like the table resting my arms on right now, this is a very dark brown table. And it's not far off of my complexion. This is the same way the books of remembrance describe our ancestors: Adam, Noah, Yahweh, etc. And Eve. actual practice, English brown was originally a very dark color. Mulatto is another terminology that started out meaning the mixture of Native Americans and Africans. Talking about very dark-skinned, copper-colored brown people who are Americans, and the people that are people that was over that was taken to Africa, same people, which eventually became the mixture of whites and blacks. See, they try to get in by saying, okay, now since the $5 version had children with the true Americans, now they call mulatto. It is interesting to note here that the English terminology black became to be used in an all-encompassing way to describe all the shades of people of color. What is also fascinating is how it has been concealed that the indigenous people of the Americas were once considered to be Negroes, that they were the first slaves utilized in the Americas, and their transportation to Spain was originally termed the African slave trade, but since been properly named the transatlantic slave trade. One word to Terry. It's one word. It's one section I'm looking for. It says, I'm just looking at page 31 of One Word to Terry, Who Are the Terrarians? I can read it all because we done read it over time and time again. I just want to point out the MUURs in the Americas, who they call Saracens, who recline, which is a current problem that the MUURs in America face today. It said, who are the red ones, also known as the lost tribe of Israel. Then we go back to page 77. And it speaks about man. A monthly record of the anthropological science published under the direction of the Royal Anthropological Institute of Great Britain and Ireland. April 1939. Original articles with plate D. Physical Anthropology, Stewart, by T.D. Stewart. The recent paper in the journal by Baxton, Trevor, and Julian, Man, 1938 and 47, in parentheses, implies that an underformed Negroid physical type inhabited the Virgin Islands in pre-Columbian times. Not only is this implication contrary to previously accepted findings, for the Atlantean Antillean area, in parentheses, as will be shown later, but it also fails to give adequate consideration to the possibility of the skeletal remains these skeletal remains representing intrusive Negroid burials. The mere presence of skeletons in a sand or shell mound of Indian origin, lacking careful stratigraphic records. is not certain evidence of a primary association with the accompanying artifacts. Moreover, I venture to say that few physical anthropologists familiar with the American Indian skulls would mistake for Indian these illustrated by Braxton, Trevor, and Julian. Indeed, most physical anthropologists would probably be less conservative and say Negro instead of Negroid. See, Negroid is a way to try to get around the truth. The bottom of page 77, and the American Negro or Indian or MUUR I'm going to keep it like that. Is the oldest man on earth. The oldest chromosome on earth was found in a man from South Carolina and it's unrelated to African lineages. That's because we didn't come from Africa. Page 78, the Spanish and Portuguese captured and sold what they called Negro de Terro into European slave markets. The Dutch and English didn't even enter Africa until the late 1700s, yet slavery started in 1492. The bottom of the page says, the Negro is the Indian or copper-colored indigenous people of the Americas, who is actually a redskin. Many think black people are black, yet there are many shades of copper, which is the color of the earth. If you look in the old dictionaries, you will see that nigger and Indian were synonymous. Same thing they called the prophets in the book of Acts. Nigger. They really call them Indians. Same thing. Which was both a misnomer. Because they were Israelites. Were synonyms, and that colored is simply short for copper colored, which Webster calls us under the term American. See that nigger and Indian were synonyms. See that nigger, Nigger, it just spelled Niger in the Bible. And they in the definition they're gonna use, in the definition I'm gonna share with you off on the internet, they use Neger, same thing, nigger. Just different spellings. See that nigger and Indian were synonyms, that color is simply short for copper color. Why do you think they keep changing our titles from India to Negro to colored to African American? The MUUR, Negro, is the most copied man on the earth. Now let's get to the finding. The Most High let me find prior to bringing you this message. Like I said, I don't know what it says. I might have to make some corrections, but I'm just going to read to you as written from the document. And even though I don't know make corrections, the truth made the corrections. So if they lie, they make themselves negative once again. The document is titled, "The Use of the Terms Negro and Black to Include Persons of Native American Ancestry." So you got a lot of people try to play games with that. No, we weren't Native Americans. It's some people they called to try to take over the term Native American. And these are the people that call $5 Indians, who are truly Europeans. But Jack D. Forbes, who's the author of this article, his title was, or is, the use of the terms Negro, in parentheses, and Black, in parentheses, to include persons of Native American ancestry in Anglo, parentheses, North America. In 1854, the California State Supreme Court sought to bar all non-Caucasians from equal citizenship and civil rights. The court stated, the word, in parentheses, Black, may include all Negroes, but the term, in parentheses, Negro, does not include all Black persons. He goes on to say, we are of the opinion that the word white, in parentheses, Negro, in parentheses, mulatto, in parentheses, and Black persons, in parentheses, whenever they occur in our Constitution, must be taken in their generic sense. That the word Black person, in parentheses, is in the 14th section, must be taken as a contra distinguished from whites, and necessarily includes all races other than Caucasian. That's why they told us by necessity that the Constitution of 49 states of America has been restored in favor of the true Americans, the Israelites, and that we're sovereign once again. But I continue with this document. As convoluted as the quote may be, it tends to express a strong tendency in the history of the United States towards creating two broad classes of people. Same thing the Roman Catholic Pope probably certainly told you. There's always been two classifications. The true Americans and the British colony American, colony citizens. So you call yourself a U.S. citizen, you are under the British colony as a slave. That's the mystery of Babylon. Mystery Babylon the Great. As convoluted as the quote may be, it tends to express a strong tendency in the history of the United States towards creating two broad classes of people, white and non-white, citizen and non-citizen, or semi-citizen. The tendency to create a two-case society, often classed with the reality of a territory which included many different types of people of all colors and different degrees of intermixture of European, American, African, and Asian. Native American people, whether of unmixed ancestry or mixed with other stocks. Now I gotta go see what Webster said again about that term stock when it comes to race. Webster 1828 dictionary. Before I get there, let's look at the term American. Because Revealing America's Dark Past warned us, it says it's difficult, or you should be careful when you're using ancient etymology with modern terminology. Because the modern people, who are the Europeans, try to change everything to their favor. American. Adjective pertaining to America. American, now a native of America. Originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper color races. The modern people said, but now found here by the Europeans. But now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America, and they're from Europe. But they're originally from Idumea. Idumea. Edom. Mount Seir. Oh yeah, let me go back. I almost forgot why I went there. Talking about race. It's hard to get around race because that's what it's all about. That's why they made up the term race. Race is a noun, Latin radix or radius, having the same original. This word coincides in origin with rod, ray, radiate, etc. The lineage of a family or continued series of a descendant from a parent who is called the stock. A race is a series in a sentence indefinitely. That means you'll never change from your stock. Thus, all mankind are called the race of Adam. Colon is to say, but the Israelites of the race of Abraham and Jacob. We don't come from the same stock. Although we originally did come from Adam. But Cain made a secret dark oath and changed his stock. Satan is his father. That's their stock. The Israelites of the race of Abraham. Why don't say the Negroes or why don't say the copper colored people, the indigenous people, and all these people? That describes who we are. But he said the Israelites. The Israelites are the race of Abraham and Jacob. Thus we speak of a race of kings, race of Clovis or Charlemagne, a race of nobles, etc. People might get us. I don't want to include. That's just made itself naked. He said, "Thus a long line of race of the Albines. We didn't come. We're not Albines. Albines. That's Europeans." Native Americans. This guy finna tell you these are the Aboriginal indigenous people, the copper colored people, the Negroes. Terminology they use. Whether of unmixed ancestry or mixed with other stocks, were at times affected by the tendency to create purely white-black social system, especially when living away from a reservation or the ancestral homeland. In the British slave colonies of North America, along with the Atlantic coast, many persons of American ancestry were at times classified as blacks, Negroes, he said, of American ancestry, were at times classified as blacks, Negroes, mulattoes, or people of color. Same definition West gave, the true Americans. And these terms were, of course, used for people of African ancestry. Why is that? Because the people that came from Adam, who are Israelites, got shipped from America to Africa Before that, Cain was already there because he was already kicked out of America by his father Adam. Cain after he killed his brother Abel. The manner in which Americans and part Americans were sometimes classified as mulattoes and people of color. From New England to South Carolina, we just got finished talking about South Carolina, where the first man was discovered. He had no association with Africa. And in the Spanish Empire are explored elsewhere. The purpose here is to illustrate how the term Negro has also been applied to people of American descent. Exploration and Ethnic Studies, Volume 7, Number 2, July 1984. The possibility that Native Americans were quite commonly called Negroes is very much supported by Portuguese usage. During the colonial period, Brazilian Indians were repeatedly referred to as Negroes or as Negro de Tara. We just got finished reading that. And the one Washingtonian that backs that up. Meaning, in parentheses, Negroes of the land. One Washingtonian said they were sold as Negroes de Tara. But this document says that means Negroes of the land. A great many examples from the 16th and later centuries are cited by George Frederici in his analysis of Portuguese sources. One thing I love about the Most High, I have no guile in my heart. I just report it like it is. And I had no idea this article existed until moments before I decided to go live. Or he decided for me to go live. These do not have to be repeated here, but suffice to say that it is so common that finally, in 1755, a royal decree had to be issued as follows. Among the regrettable practices which have resulted in the disparagement of the Indians, one prime abuse is the unjustifiable and scandalous practice of calling them Negroes. Perhaps by so doing, the intent was no other than to induce them the belief that their origins, they have been destined to be slaves of whites, as is generally considered to be the case of blacks from the coast of Africa. The directors will not permit henceforth that anybody may refer to an Indian as a Negro, nor that they themselves may use this epithet among themselves, as is currently the case. This Portuguese usage is extremely significant, not only because of American or part American slaves could be referred to as Negroes in the early shipment records, but also because it is very much affects one's analysis of population statistics in colonial Brazil. In parentheses, where in fact the categories of Negro and mulatto must have often included domesticated or enslaved Indians or mixed bloods. So guess what? If you ain't never came from Africa, ain't never been to Africa, you not no mixed blood. Insofar as the term Negro became synonymous with slave or a servile status. It lost any specific color reference. It became a general term of abuse, in parentheses, darker people preferring to be called preto as a result. Most High said, get rid of all that foolishness. Just call yourself by the name I called you, and I'll hear you then. Although that is evidence against them by trying to suppress who you really are, by giving you all these titles of who they say you are. It is highly likely that the Spaniards also referred to slaves. It is highly likely that the Spaniards also referred to slaves, generally as Negroes, in the Caribbean, that the Dutch took over the same general practice, since Negro and nigger, N-E-G-E-R, N-E-G-R. So that's why I told you, remember that term. Same thing as nigger. Since Negro and nigger were not Dutch words, it had no immediate equivalent except swart, darker, swart, dunker, and Bruin. So when you talk about the UCLA Bruins, you're talking about Negroes. A Dutch-French-Spanish dictionary of 1639 has the following entry for Spanish. Negro in parentheses, nor, sombre, obscure, offusqué, Bruin, French, in parentheses, dark, swart, dunker, Bruin, Dutch. The Spanish Negro could be translated as dark or brown, as well as black, swart. Undoubtedly, this usage facilitated making reference to all slaves as Negroes or niggers. In the Dutch language, moreover, it is significant that a Spaniard residing in Antwerp in the early 17th century, in parentheses, the preparer of the dictionary saw Negro, in parentheses, as being translated in a number of ways in both French and Dutch. By the latter half of the 16th century, the English were referring to the people of Africa as Ethiopians, blackamoors, Negroes, and Moors, M-O-R. Same thing as the book of one word Syrian says. A Moor is synonymous with African. M-O-R. And actually, looking for that Bible dictionary. It said all these people were from the line of Ham, except the Negroes, who come from Shem, who are the M-U-R, if you don't use the term more. Negro gradually became to be a dominant term, especially after exhaustive contact with the Spanish and the Portuguese. What is not clear is the extent to which the term Negro was constantly translated as black. The automatic association of Negro with black color cannot be assumed, since black Africans are actually of medium or dark brown color, and we're not African. and we're not black. At least I'm not. Because some of y'all might want to still hold on to that as a term of endearment. I'm not trying to disrespect you either. That's just the truth. Some of you want to hold on to it. I can't make you be on that, but I can tell you the truth. In any case, another association gradually arose, and that was between Negro and slave. Early legislation commonly referred to Negro and the other slaves, or to Negro, mulatto, and Indian slaves. Over the years, Negro and black both became synonymous with enslavement. So what did it just tell you? The term Negro, mulatto, and Indian is synonymous with enslavement. Some people say, I don't want to talk the Israelite stuff, man. I don't want to involve God, and I don't involve religion. That's because you still want to be a slave. And we're not religious. This is who we are by bloodline. Israelites. American Israelites. This article right here just told you that all these bywords hold you to the land of who you really are, the true American. And I didn't lie to you, I read it to you. In 1702, an observer wrote that the wealth of Virginia consisted of slaves or Negroes. In 1702, an observer wrote that the wealth of Virginia, that can be associated with the District of Columbia, consisted of slaves or Negroes. The wealth. Same thing the Roman Catholic Pope told you about necessity. By 1806, Virginia judges ruled that a person who was of a white appearance was to be presumed free. But in the cases of persons visibly appearing to be of the slave race, it is incumbent upon him to make out his freedom. That's why I told you by necessity, it's to your advantage to stand on who you really are. Claim to be American. But you've been brainwashed to say that you're a United States citizen, and you've been trained to say if you speak against that, you're anti-American. No, you're anti-American by being a United States citizen, because they make you a citizen of Britain, ruled over by Rome. But they told you it's by necessity. But some of y'all so brainwashed you can't see it or hear it. By 1806, Virginia judges ruled that a person who was a white appearance, and then we got preachers in Israel talking about it's not about color. I got your back. You got the back of white supremacists. You are chocolate covered white supremacist. In 1702, an observer wrote that the wealth of Virginia consisted of slaves or Negroes. By 1806, Virginia judges ruled that a person who was of a white appearance was to be presumed free, but in the cases of persons visibly appearing to be of the slave race, they say if you're copper colored or Negro, using terms, or Indian, or mulatto, you of the slave race. Then you know that we're really the real Israelites. Watch this scripture. Jeremiah chapter 2 and 14. Is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave? Why is he spoiled? He said that Israel, under the term of black, colored, African American, mulatto, all these terms, is a slave race. Most High said, but come up to you who you really are as a king, or queens, priests, and priestess. I've been calling the name I gave you. In 1702, an observer wrote that the wealth of Virginia consisted of slaves or Negroes. By 1806, Virginia judges ruled that a person who was of a white appearance was to be presumed free. But in the case of persons visibly appearing to be of the slave race, it is incumbent upon him to make out his freedom. That's why they told you. Proclaim who you are. And I've been doing it since 2017 for the freedom of Israel. And the more information I become to know, I made the corrections. Then I brought you out by the Most High's power of their confessions to know the claim to be an American Israelite. And they confessed by necessity that those who do this and keep the Most High's commandments are sovereign. Over the international jurisdictions, I mean the whole world. And then he's going to say, anyone that touches these Americans, both physically or mentally, you will end up like the Nazis in Nuremberg, facing the tribunal of the Messiah. In 1819, South Carolina judges stated flatly, the word Negroes has a fixed meaning, slaves. So what else does that tell you? Read this for you again. Go up to the top where it says, in any case, another association gradually arose, and that was between Negro and slave. Early legislation commonly referred to Negroes and other slaves, or to Negro, mulatto, and Indian slaves. Over the years, Negro and black both became synonymous with enslavement, all these terms. That's why they want you to call yourself all these terms. And then they had a sellout named Jesse Jackson in 1984 of the, as I quote, the Rainbow Coalition. To call yourself African American, which entitles all these things, will still make you a slave. In 1819, South Carolina judge stated flatly, the word Negroes has a fixed meaning, slaves. So in their law, the term Negro, African American, all these different terms is fixed, meaning slaves. So when you associate yourself with that, to them, that means you call yourself a slave. And they do too. What the English meant by the term Negro, when they first began to use it, is not clear. Yeah, it's clear. That's a byword. Because Most High never called you a Negro or any of these other terms. What they mean by it's not clear is because all these other terms they call you. What they didn't tell you was they all mean the same thing to them, slave. And it's based on your dark skin. But guess what? Yahweh got the same dark skin you got. The power of the whole universe. So dark skin is not a curse. The white skin is. That's why he called them the people of his curse. Book of Remembrance tells us that they consider themselves cursed. I even was looking at, because I'm a comic book fan, and I was observing Superman. I said, man, Superman is a bad dude, boy. They got him beating all other comic book characters up. But then I saw him, Superman gets his power by going nearer to the sun and bathing in the sun. That's called vitamin C. They can't stand in the sun. What the English meant by the term Negro when they first began to use it is not clear. Yes, it is. Racism. I'm not just saying that. That's backed by the scriptures and by reality, what you see for yourself. Because the scripture is reality. Especially when it's taught precept on precept, line by line, precept on precept, line here, there, a little. So I can here a little, there a little. Because it teaches reality. It's only when you go to church and get the fairy tales. Getting dogma. Certainly it was not then synonymous with slave, as a great many persons so classified were free, both in England and Virginia. That's a lie too. The Roman Catholic Pope, private attorney, said, you went from being a private owned slave to a publicly owned slave. Christopher Columbus came over here to enslave you, so that's a lie. Matter of fact, it tells you their intention was to enslave you. That's what dumb diverses was, the doctrine of discovery. They came to enslave Negro de Terror, people of the land. So they can take the land through dumb diversion. But now dumb diversion is no more by necessity. They already claimed it and confessed it. And I still ain't lied to you. Unless you claim to be, that you're emphatic to be these slaves, you forcing yourself to be a slave because you don't want to break free from your enslaver. Because you want to be called by their name. Even MOR is called by the Romans. Go look at the term in the Webster Dictionary for MOR. He said that's called by the Romans. Certainly, it was not then synonymous with slave, as a great many persons so classified were free. Both in England and in Virginia, did it mean an African, a black person, or any dark-skinned individual? Today, the term is not widely employed in Britain, although the word black is used to refer to a people of various skin colors from all of South Asia, the Middle East, the West Indies, and Africa. That's what the term black is used to refer to those people. Most Native Americans, if living in Britain today, will be regarded as black, especially if their ancestry were not known. Negro was also used in a general way in North American colonies. Some examples illustrate the use of Negro and black as supplied to people of American ancestry. That's why they won't let you know. But the Messiah said, I come not except for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, to let them know they're the children of Israel. And they're not slaves. They're the son of the king, the Most High King, which makes them kings and queens if they obey his commandments. An example from the West Indies is especially illuminating. In 1764, William Young was sent to St. Vincent as a part of the British occupation of that island. Living on St. Vincent were about 3,000 black Caribbees, or free Negroes. That's an oxymoron, a free slave. I'm talking about what they even definition, their definition. But I will go and say it based on what they wrote. Black Caribbees are free Negroes. Israelites, free Israelites. About 100 red Caribbees are Indians. Just read that, the one wanted to tell it, he said, are the red skins. He said, these are the ones they call MURs. And they're the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And some 4,000 French and their slaves, according to Young, the British found it difficult to control the Caribbees, the Caribs, and war fought with them in 1771 to 1772. And again during the 1795 and 1796. During the latter crisis, Young wrote an extremely anti-Carib tract designed to prove that the Caribs should be removed from St. Vincent. They were eventually defeated, and some 5,000 were shipped to an island near the coast of Honduras. Young was anxious to prove that the so-called black Caribs were not true Aborigines, but were in fact Negro colonists, free Negroes, or Negroes usurpers. This was important to him because he wanted to show they had no bona fide land rights or Aboriginal titles. See, he was still trying to steal the land from them. Colonies were trying to steal the land from the true Israelites because they fought back. For our purpose, the interesting point omitted by Young is that the so-called blacks or Negroes were occasionally of tawny and mixed complexion because of American ancestry, and that their customs, personal names, and language were those of the native Caribs. Still further, Young admitted that they had repeatedly intermarried with American women. He consistently refers to them as Negroes nonetheless. That's why Yahweh said, do not marry them. Because if you don't marry them, they won't have no stance to try to say nothing against you, but you disobedient. Young also relayed a great deal of hearsay information about how the black Caribs had originated. He said hearsay, which is without foundation for the analysis here. He said that hearsay is without foundation for analysis here. The important point in this, that a people thoroughly American in identity, culture, and language were called black and Negro, solely because of these being mixed with African ancestry. This tendency continues incidentally among white scholars who even today refuse to accept the Caribs' avowed feeling of Indianness and continue to call them black. In 1619, some 20 Negroes, I heard a term like this, some 20 odd Negroes. I don't know. I just think I thought I heard that before. In 1619, some 20 Negroes were brought to Virginia. At least 11 have names of Spanish or probably Spanish character. Later, they were joined by Negroes and mulattoes with names such as Antonio, Several, and John Pedro. I'm not a part of no camps, but I do listen to other people, and I try to get truth and gather it in and throw away what's not true. I was listening to IUIC, and they brought this out, that Anthony was the original term of the Israelites. When I brought it up here, because they said it right here. With names such as Antonio, in parentheses, several people had the name Antonio, and John Pedro. These Spanish-derived servants could have been a part of American ancestry. He said, this is not hearsay. However, no evidence is available to accept that they were largely secured from captured Spanish vessels. In 1676, one Goin, an Indian servant, acquired his freedom in Virginia. 2 decades earlier, Millhill McGowan, called a Negro, also acquired his freedom. It would appear that the Negro was probably father to the Indian in this case. That gets rid of the idea of Japanese or either Asian persuasion being who they call the Indians. In 1670, the population of the Virginia colony was said to be 40,000, including 2,000 black slaves. Evidence indicates that there could not have been that many Africans there. See, he's saying he's not Africans. And also there were great many American slaves or servants. Thus, the total of blacks must have included a good many Americans. In 1698, 3 fugitive Negroes were reported in North Carolina, of whom one was an American. Similarly, a list of Negroes imported into Virginia, 1710 to 1718, by sea includes at least 69 Indians, mostly from the Carolinas. Likewise, list of Negroes brought into New York from 1715 to 1736 include many slaves of probable or stated American ancestry from Campeche, Jamaica, Honduras, the Carolinas, and Virginia. In 1715 and 1717 period, the Vestry Book of King William's Parish, Virginia, records 1 year robbing an Indian, and 2 years later robbing a Negro. In a similar manner, in 1691, list of Negro slaves in York County, Virginia, includes Cape Indian, while in 1728, list of Negroes at the home house of a Virginia platter includes Indian robbing. So they keep on changing titles. Robin, incidentally, is a common name for slaves of American ancestry. In 1748, there was an advertisement in New York for a Negro man called Robin, almost of the complexion of the Indian. Talks good English, can read and write, and plays on the fiddle. In 1723, Virginia adopted a law depriving free Negroes, mulattoes, and Indians of certain basic civil rights. The act was disallowed by British officials, but in 1735, Lieutenant Governor Gooch defended it by asserting that he wanted to make a perpetual brand upon free Negroes and mulattoes by excluding them from the great privilege of a free man. He wanted to make the free Negro sensible that a distinction ought to be made between their offspring and the descendants of an Englishman, with whom they never were to be accounted equal. Since the act applied to the Native Americans and the half Americans, mulattoes, in parentheses. He said I'm going to use the terms, the Native Americans were considered full-blooded Negroes. The mulattoes were considered half Americans. Gooch's language would seem to be include them under the general category of free Negroes and mulattoes. This probably gonna be more than one video. A welcome clarification of terminology was provided in 1719 by the government of South Carolina when it decided, in quotes, for preventing all doubts and scruples that may arise what ought to be taxed, in brackets, on musties and mulattoes, etc. All such slaves as are not entirely Indian should be accounted as Negroes. He said all full-blooded Negroes he said, but the ones that really supposed to be called slaves are the musties and mulattoes. But they all slave terminology. He said the slave race. The significance of this act is that all later enumerated of Negro and Indian slaves in South Carolina have to be analyzed with the thought in mind that many Negroes were probably one half or other fractions of American ancestry. New Jersey was also an era where Americans and Africans intermixed with considerable frequency. In 1734, an advertisement appeared for the recovery of WAN, W-A-N, in parentheses, or in, I'll just use the term parentheses, J-U-A-N. Question mark. He is half Indian and half Negro. He played the fiddle and speaks good English, and is in his country Indian. Juan was not specifically called a Negro, but a 1747 advertisement reads, "Run away on the 20th of September last from Cohansey, a very lusty Negro fellow named Sampson, aged about 53 years, and he had some Indian blood in him. He had with him a boy about 12 or 13 years of age named Sam. Was born of an Indian woman and looks like an Indian, only his hair. They both talk Indian very well. And it's, how you talking Indian? Probably talking about slang. And it's like they have dressed themselves in the Indian dress and gone to Carolina. Similarly, in 1778, advertisement we read, was stolen from her mother, a Negro girl, about 9 or 10 years of age, named Diana. Her mother's name is Cash. Was married to an Indian named Lewis Wallace, near 6 feet high, about 35 years of age. They have a male child with them between 3 or 4 years of age. Any person who takes up the said Negroes and Indian should have the above reward. From these examples, we can see that people of mixed American ancestry, mixed American African ancestry, could be called Negroes. In New Jersey, Cyrus Bustille of Philadelphia Baker, in parentheses black, born in 1732 at Burlington, New Jersey, married a Delaware Indian woman. His son became a Quaker and an anti-slavery leader and was known as a Negro. In Canada in 1747, 4 Negroes and a Panis, American slave, escaped from Montreal. A French writer referred to them simply as Negroes. In 1759, one Saunders, a runaway slave, was described in South Carolina as a Negro man of the musty breed. Musty meant either European American or European African, American African. In 1775, authorities in South Carolina were ordered to apprehend John Swan, a reported free Negro or mestizo man. In the 1780s, certain white Virginians began to agitate for the termination of the Genguskin Indian Reservation in Northampton County. The reserve was described as an asylum for free Negroes. And it was alleged that the Americans have at least become nearly extinct, there being at this time not more than 3 or 4 genuine Indians at most. That's a lie. The place is a harbor or a convenient asylum for an idle set of free Negroes. In 1812, it was argued that the place is now inhabited by as many black men as Indians. So they're using terminology to try to confuse you. All these people are the same people. That's why they try to get you calling yourself all this different stuff. To them, you just the same old nigga. Most sides say get rid of this confusion and be called by my name. What I called you in the first place. The Indian women have many of them married black men, and a majority probably of the inhabitants are blacks or have black blood in them. The real Indians are few. The reserve was allotted, in parentheses, in 1813. By 1832, whites had acquired most of it. In 1828, the Guinescan descendants were described as respectable Negro landowners. This episode reminds one of Young's attack upon the Caribs of St. Vincent in 1795. And there's also more recent attempts to allot and acquire Indian lands. A similar attack took place upon the Pamunkey, Mattapony in 1843, in parentheses, which failed. And against the Nottoway from 1830 to 1878, in parentheses, which succeeded. By the 1840s, at least 2 Nottoway were registered as free Negroes. The heirs of one family were described in 1878 as all being Negroes and very poor. Let me take a break. Yeah, I'll be right back. All right. Revelations 2:9. I know your works in tribulation, in poverty, but in parentheses, but you are rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. He said, when they say that they us, he said, Most High said, that's blasphemy. Back to the use of the term of Negro and black. It said a similar attack took place upon Pumaki, Matapunin, in 1843. Punin. Remind me of the book he remembers of where he says about Puni, and that was my real mother's, well, I say real mother, my mother's name, or nickname, Puni. And I forgot to tell you that my uncle used to tease me all the time. He said, that's Puni boy, Puni boy. That was one of my nicknames, Puni boy. And I say a lie to you. Because he used to always call me like, Puni boy. He used to tease me. A similar attack took place on the Pamanuki, Mataponian in 1843, which failed. And against the Nottoway from 1830 to 1878, which succeeded. By 1840s, at least 2 Nottoway were registered as free Negroes. The heirs of one family were described in 1878 as being Negroes and very poor. That's why that scripture came to mind in Revelation 2:9. He said they are heirs. Aside from Virginia, were persons descended from female Americans imported or a certain date could obtain their freedom. All slaves of American ancestry remain slaves throughout the entire duration of slavery, unless they were emancipated or ran away. At the end of the 18th century, Bob, a carpenter fellow of a yellowish complexion, musty, has bushy hair, run away. He was said to speak more proper than Negroes in general. Other persons of American ancestry who were free also were called black or Negro. So what does that tell you? They wasn't really free. They still was called that. Paul Cuffey. See, now you got the right to choose to be called that or not, because you can be called by the Most High's name. Other persons of American ancestry. See, they told you all through this article that the true American ancestry was Israelites, who they call black or Negro, or Indian, or nigger, or worse. Paul Cuffey, the noted half American, half African merchant was called at various times an Indian, a black man. And this free and enlightened African, he signed petitions with Indian men and all free Negroes and mulattoes. Other examples of a similar nature abound. One author writes that the Sampsons and the Galleys probably owned and school and property owners and school teachers thought predominantly of Indian blood were leaders among the free Negroes of Petersburg, Virginia in 1860. Virginia tax rolls and census records from 1780s and 1850 have numerous examples of people of Indian tribal identity being classified as free people of color or as mulattoes. In fact, the practice was almost universal. Some were classified as FN, capital F period, capital N period, free Negroes, or as B, in parentheses, black, in various records. In certain counties, such as as Southampton, in parentheses, in 1830, and in part of Delaware, virtually, all free non-white were categorized as capital FN, free Negro. Although enumerated under the free people of color column, these lists included people of the Nanticoke and other tribal groups. So what's that telling you? I looked at it before. Etymology showed that they already know that the tribes that are free are the children of Israel. Under certain conditions, persons of African descent could be legally classified as a member of an Indian tribe or as an Indian. In a treaty with the Creek Nation, the Commissioner of Indian Affairs noted in 1832, an Indian, whether of full or half-blood, who has a female slave living with him as his wife, is the head of a family and entitled to a reservation in brackets of land. Also, free blacks who have been admitted as members of the Creek Nation and are regarded as such by the tribes, if they have families, are entitled to reservations of land. In the 1860s, all persons of African ancestry who had been slaves were granted by treaty Now, I'm thinking about what I'm reading. I'm not hating on my African brothers, but he told you that the true people are the Americans. Let me keep reading. In the 1860s, all persons of African ancestry who had been slaves were granted by treaty citizenship in the 5 civilized tribes of Indian Territory. The general trend, however, was to enroll the more visible part African persons as freedmen, citizens. See? They still was trying to not give the true Americans freedom. That's why they're still trying to tell you go back to Africa. And to restrict their tribal status. When lands were allotted in the 1880s to the early 1900s, most such persons were not allowed to assert American ancestry and were therefore denied future rights as Indians. So he said Africans cannot be Indians. They said Indians and Negroes are still slaves. That's why it's describing who really are the true Americans, and the Most High said we're Israelites. And they ain't got no say-so over us. During the Seminole Wars, a new term seems to have been coined, and that is that of Indian Negroes. So they just keep on making up new stuff for the same people. One source, General Wiley Thomas, asserted in 1835 that they are descendants from the Seminoles and are connected by consanguinity. Other writers refer to them as the hostile Negroes, and mulattoes in the Seminole Nation are simply Indian Negroes. Few white writers seem to have continued to use the use of Indian Negro. Few white writers seem to have continued to use the use of Indian Negro. However, in the Yuchi language, mixed people of that type were referred to as Gaspiatatsala, or red black people. In North Carolina, many people of Lumbee Indian identity were categorized as types as Negroes. In 1837, Charles Oxendine of Robinson County was punished as a free Negro. How you get punished if you're free? In 1842, one of the Brave Boy family was called a Negro, while in 1857, as Chavers was charged as a free person of color with carrying a shotgun. He was not convicted because the act specified free Negroes, and he was charged as a free colored. The court stated that free persons of color may be persons colored by Indian blood. The indictment cannot be sustained. In a similar situation, some white men took away guns from the Pontiac people in Virginia in 1857. The governor had then returned, but stated, if any become 1/4 mixed with the Negro race, then they may be treated as free Negroes or mulattoes. Virginia at this time defined a mulatto as 1/4 or more African. In Louisiana in 1856, the Black Code was said to refer to offenses involving slaves, Indians, and free persons of color. Many narratives or ex-slaves recorded in 1830s reveal Indian ancestry. One such person called an Indian was Uncle Mobile Hobson of Virginia. He says, etc., come time to marry. And he married a black woman. That make me black, I suppose. In 1871, a white writer of Maryland observed, in parentheses, Dorchester County is Indian Creek. Some of the last Indians of the Peninsula struck their wigwams towards the close of the last century, and there were now no full-blooded Aborigines in the eastern shore although many of the freeborn Negroes show Indian traces. Quite commonly, however, some of the freeborn Negroes of the Eastern Shore continue to identify and survive as native people. The whites often tried to deny their Indianness, as in 1856 when a marker was erected to commemorate a woman who had testified that the Nanticoke people of Delaware had African ancestry. The Indians were referred to on the marker as arrogant Negroes that assumed to be what they were not. During the 18th century, most persons of mixed race, especially if free, were classified as mulattoes, mustees, and persons of color. The term Negro was perhaps less likely to be used for such people, except as noted in the examples above. See, when I had the privilege of seeing when my mother and father was, they was marked as Negroes on their birth certificates. They was full of blood. The term Negro was perhaps less likely to be used for such people, except as noted in the examples above. This usage continued in some states, such as the Carolinas and Virginia, well into the 19th century. For example, the jurists of South Carolina noted in 1852, it is not according to the use of language in this region to speak of one altogether black as a person of color. The phrase is almost exclusively applied to one mixed blood or color. The phrase is almost exclusively applied to one of mixed blood and color. The change took place in such states as Indiana in 1817, Kentucky 1852, and elsewhere 1850s, early 1900s, as the term Negro came to encompass most persons of part African descent. This change may have been affected. This change may have not affected people of solely African and American descent, especially if the African ancestry predominated. Since many, in parentheses, but not all, Native Americans or brown are dark colored without African ancestry. Since many, in parentheses, but not all, Native Americans were brown or dark colored without African ancestry. Their descendants, when mixed only with African blood, would very likely have been as Negroes, while most Europeans, especially in North America, were special terms for such persons, such as Zambo, Griffo, Lobo, Kafuso, Cabra, and Cabor never became current. The United States Census also tended to expand the use of the term black or Negro. In 1890, black was used for all persons having 3/4 or more black blood. In 1910, black was supposed to be applied only to the full-blooded Negroes. While the matter of who was an Indian was left to the enumerator. The term mulatto was to be used for all other persons having some portion or perceptible trace of Negro blood. It is certain that large numbers of Americans or part Americans were classified as Negro or mulatto under these rules. So it said if you got classified as a Negro, you pure-blooded American or at least 3/4 of American. You basically just American. If you're mulatto, you was mixed with American and African blood, or nowadays American and European blood. If you turn them mulatto. For example, the Mattaponi, only one person was counted as Indian by the census out of the reservation population of that at least 40 persons. Similarly, the Pusatuck of Long Island had only one person counted as Indian, doubtless because the rest were enumerated as Negroes or mulattoes. The 1910 census counted 2,255 Negroes who were part Indian, were enrolled members of other tribes like it. Another group of 1,793 tribal members were of a mixed European, African, and American ancestry. There's only slightly more than 3,000 persons who were part African were counted with the Indian population as compared with the hundreds of thousands who were doubtless counted as Negro or mulatto because of living away from a federal recognized reservation area. In 1930, a person of mixed Indian or Negro blood should be returned as Negro unless the Indian blood predominates and the status as an Indian is generally accepted in the community. By 1940, all African American hybrids were to be counted as Negroes unless the Indian ancestry very definitely predominates and he is universally accepted as an Indian. Even pure-blooded Indians could be counted as blacks, as in Nevada in 1880 when the census enumerator categorized 90 members of the Duckwater Shoshone tribe in that manner. In the state of Delaware, more recent decades found that if a person said he was an Indian, he was recorded as either black or white, depending upon his appearance. The 1980 census was so arranged that any American African mixed blood, see how they reverse it? They said on this land, if you had any African in you, you was first mentioned American African. But why? How did you become an African American? They're trying to get you off the land further by sending you back to Africa. They don't mention mention African American yet. The 1980 census was so arranged. The 1980 census was so arranged that any American African mixed blood who checked both black and Indian boxes was counted solely as black. In summary, it seems clear that many persons of Native American ancestry, in whole or part, have been at times classified as Negroes or blacks. This is a matter of considerable significance for the scholar seeking to understand the actual ethnic and racial identity of the non-white persons in North America British colonies. The North American British colonies you classify as a United States citizen based on knowledge. They don't say this here, but they confess it by necessity. This is a matter of considerable significance for the scholar seeking to understand the actual ethnic and racial identity of non-white persons in North America British colonies and in the United States over the centuries. Earlier studies have shown the significance of the terms mulatto, musty, sambo, zambo, in parentheses, and colored, as indicating persons of American or possibly part American ancestry collectively. These studies serve to show the probability of a much greater degree of intermixture between Africans and Native Americans that has heretofore been widely acknowledged. But of course, it might be argued that this is an old hat, especially to the people of the Afro-American community, who have long been aware of the extensive Indian ancestry, and who have, and at least since the Civil War, self-consciously utilized terms Negro or black, and in parentheses, and of course, colored, to encompass people of mixed Native American and African descent. Individuals such as Ann Plato, Paul Cuffey, Crispus and Tux, Hiram Revels, and many others have long been referred to as Negroes, in spite of having perhaps at least much Native American as African ancestry, even when living in Indian communities, as was the case with Tux and Cuffey. From the scholarly perspective, the logic of white racism, in parentheses, which has tended to classify people in very arbitrary ways, is neither the logic of genetics nor the bona fide ethnicity. The mixture of African and American does not make a person black or Negro any more than it makes one automatically Indian. Ethnic scholars must aver that it is both pernicious and dangerous to read into evidence and to affirm for earlier times the pronouncement of a dominant social caste, their myths, their prejudice, and their systems of classification and nomenclature must all be subjected to critical and empirical reevaluation. Let's see how this is a long list. Let me read some of it. It said notes. The People versus Hall, October 1st, 1854, and Robert Hazer and Alan J. Almaquist as the other Californians. In parentheses, Berkeley, University of California Press, 1971, 232 and 233. I use the term American to refer to the Native Americans race during the colonial period to avoid confusion with other people called Indians likewise. Whites will be called Europeans, and black Africans will be called Africans. Told you, we're the Americans. Who the Most High calls Israelites. That's what Adam was. The Garden of Eden was right here in North America. It says 3, 1, 2, and this is the third reference. See Jack D. Forbes, The Evaluation of the Terms Mulatto, a chapter in Black Native American Relations, Journal of Ethnic Studies, Volume 10, Number 2, in parentheses, Summer, 1982, 45 to 66. Mulattoes and People of Color in Anglo-North America, Implications for Black Indian Relations. Unpublished, Miss and Musty, Half-Breeds and Zambos in Anglo-North America, The American Indian Quarterly, Volume 7, Number 1, in parentheses, 1983, 57 to 83. 4, George Frederici, Americanistics, Wartenbach, in parentheses, Hamburg, D. Grutter, 1947, 446 to 447. Directorial, Que se devo observar nas posições dos índios do Pará, Maranhão, as cited by A.G.R. Russell Wood, The Black Man in Slavery, and Freedom in Colonial Brazil, London, in parentheses, Macmillan, 1982, 42 to 43, and Juan Fresco Rodriguez, reputed author, in parentheses, then Gruden Dictionaries in Schott von Dre J. Tallinn, in parentheses, Antwerp, Trosnesia, 1639, Negro. 5. Almond W. Labor, Indian Slavery in Colonial Times within the present limits of the United States, in parentheses, New York, AMS Press, Inc., 1913, 3311. John S. Bassett, ed. The Writings of the Colonial Williamsburg, New York, Doubleday, 1901, 8 through 9. John Candaman Hurd, ed. The Law of Freedom and Bondage in the United States, Volume 2, in parentheses, New York, Negro Universities Press, 1968, 1995. The Oxford English Dictionary, Oxford Clarendon Press, 1933, Negro. Six, Elizabeth Donen, Documents Illustrative of the History of the Slave Trade, Volume 4, parentheses, Washington, D.C., Carnegie, 1932 and 668. James Hugo Johnston, Race Relations in Virginia and Miscegenation in South, 1776 to 1860. In parentheses, Amherst, University of Massachusetts Press, 1970. 194, Ex parte Leland is cited in the Leland T. Catterall Judicial Cases Concerning America and the Negro, Volume 2, Washington, D.C., in parentheses, Carnegie, 1929 to 311. 7, William Young, An Account of the Black Caribs, London, Cass, 1971, 98, 13 to 14, 18, 23, 27, 30, and 42. 8, C, for example, Nancy L. Solon, West Indian characteristics of the Black Carib, People and Culture of the Caribbean, Michael M. Horowitz, ed., in parentheses, New York, National History Press, 1971, 133 FF. See also David Lowenthal, West Indian Societies, London, Oxford University Press, 1972, 178 through 186. Helen T. Carter, Judicial Case Concerning American and Negro, Volume 1, Washington, D.C., Carnegie, 1929, 55 to 56 and 60. IBID, 10 is IBID, 50 and 50 and 78. Read that clearly. 10 is IBID, 58, 78. 11, John Codman Hurd, edition, The Law of Freedom and Bondage in the United States. Volume 1, New York, Negro Universities Press, 1968, 233 M. Catterall, Volume 1, 63, Wesley Frank Craven, White, Red, and Black, the 7th Century Virginian. Charlottesville, University of Virginia Press, 1971 and 98. 12, Maddie Emma Edward Parker edition, North Carolina, Higher Court Records, 1697 through 1701. Raleigh, Department of Archives and History, 1971, 528. 13. Elizabeth Donnan, Documents Illustrative of the History of the Slave Trade, Volume 3, in parentheses, Washington, D.C., Carnegie, 32, Salakia. 463, 466, 470, 477, 499 to 500, Volume 4, 175 to 179. 14. Vestry Brook of King William Parish, Virginia Magazine of History and Biography, Volume 12, in parentheses, New York Cross Reprint Corporation, 1968, originally published by Virginia Historical Society, Richmond, Virginia, 1905, 23 to 26, and finally 15, J. Lynch Wright, The Only Land They Knew, The Tragic Story of the Indians of the Old South, in parentheses, New York Free Press, 1981, 252 English, 18th century slave advertisements or advertisements, Journey of Negro History, Volume 1, Number 2, April 1915 through 176. Let's see. I don't want that, but that's all right. I'm looking for something, and I'm gonna try to end it on that once I find it, if I find it. While I'm there, might as well read this to you. Confessions by the Roman Catholic Pope's private attorney. The end of 400 years of European meddling and predation in America. The Constitution for the United States of America was saved, and a new foundation begun. The Native Americans, now we find out these are the same as the American Israelites, who they call Negro, are now free to come home to the land they were removed from. No longer POWs, they have regained their sovereignty as free, sovereign, and independent people living on the land. The United States of America and the free, sovereign, and independent people living on the land of the organic states have regained their sovereignty in the international jurisdictions of the sea. For the first time since 1789, Americans, who they call these Negroes, African Americans, Indians, etc., who the Most High calls us his Israelites, are in full control of both their natural land and sea jurisdictions. We're finally whole. They gave you a warning. Do not follow any orders to harm these Americans, who are the Most High's Israelites. Those who do will be tried for war crimes and face the death penalty just like the Nazis in Nuremberg. Bear with me, just looking. I think I found it. Another confession by the Roman Catholic post-trial attorney. Not that I'm giving it any credence or power, it's just that they're the ones that started the verses. Therefore, they're telling you that it's ended. Two different populations. Folks, there are and have always been two different populations here in America. Actual current federal employees, retirees, don't count as active federal employees. And federal dependents, political asylum seekers, etc., who receive actual paychecks or unearned benefits from the federal corporation are owed discharge of all franchise debts via bankruptcy. Now, this is only applying to the Israelites, according to the decrees of the Most High. Because we're the true Americans. And there's God finished confessing to you again by another document. The rest of us are owed discharge of the same franchise debts via probate action. The difference is that the probate action not only discharges debts accrued by secondary beneficiaries of our estates, in parentheses, the franchise operated in our names, it returns our land and our other property back to us unharmed and fully restored. That's why I'm not boasting when I tell you these things. Everything been returned to me already, like the scripture said. Not only my estate, my father's, his father's, my uncle's, because I'm the heir. The difference is that the probate action not only discharges debts accrued by the secondary beneficiaries of our states, the franchises operating in our names. See, I own all my names. They belong to me. Even the ones they created under my name, they've been returned to me. And everything is associated with them. It returns our land and our other property back to us unharmed and fully restored. If you are a federal employee or unearned dependent, for example, someone receiving SSI who never paid into or vested into Social Security, by all means, take the bankruptcy protection and run. But if you're not a federal employee or an unearned dependent, claim your estate back, and I have. And the debts will all go away just the same. And they have. But you also receive back the land and homes and businesses and other things that are rightfully yours. It's that simple. That's why when you hear me all the time say, I only want what is mine by right. That's what I'm talking about. And I'm righteous in doing that. And they still ain't sent my retirement check. I ain't got it yet. I expect that to be showing up soon. And that don't stop me from getting nothing else that's in mine by right. You can't say, okay, we'll give you that, but we ain't gonna give you. No, you gotta give me everything that's mine, right? You ain't got a leg to stand on. I still ain't lying to you. Have? No, I have not lied to you. I don't care about getting mad because you ain't got no leg to stand on. And I'm still ready to move into my house too. Get away from me, you devil. Because right now they got me in there taking cold showers, playing with the gas. Even though it's paid for. He's some devils, man. Who want to be around some devils? When I don't have to play their game. This for you people who still want to call yourself black by their own confessions. Black people, you've been conned by the Roman Catholic post-proud attorney and the Divine Rex. Well, we've all been conned, but you've been conned more than the rest of us. Everything I've seen, Martin Luther King Jr. took half a loaf and a grant of civil rights, and that at least temporarily prevented recognition of the natural and unalienable rights actually owed to black people. Maybe you thought that half a loaf was better than none. Maybe you saw it as a stepping stone to eventually have the natural and inalienable rights of all people fully recognized and honored. We'll never know what MLK knew or what he thought about this issue, but certain other things are sure. It's certain that the Democratic Party that so many black and colored people identify with, so what they, based on knowledge, black people, Africans, and colored people, Americans, terms they use, identify with, and support has in fact been their primary political opponent for decades. Look at the history. Look at the voting records. Although they told us don't vote by necessity because our voting don't count anyway. It's just a way to put you in their senses as being a supporting them, which make you, in their mind, become a British citizen. Because your vote don't matter anyway. We never know what MLK knew or what he thought about this issue. But certain other things are sure. It's certain that the Democratic Party that so many black and colored people identify with and support has in fact been their primary political opponent for decades. Look at the history, look at the voting records. It was Democrats that engineered confirmed municipal citizenship on black people following the Civil War, effectively making them politically owned slaves instead of privately owned slaves. It was Democrats who substituted civil rights for natural and inalienable rights too. Civil rights are merely privileges conferred by the municipal Congress, and they can be taken away from the municipal Congress on a whim. But your natural and inalienable rights come from nature and nature's God. That's Yahweh. Think about it. You've been conned. You've been snookered. And you don't need municipal citizenship. That means you don't need to be called a United States citizen. It was conferred on you, but you never needed it. And if you knew what it entailed, you would never want it either. She's telling you because you would be called you really claiming to be a British citizen instead of being an American that you really are, which make you a slave. You can choose to exercise your birthright political status as an American instead. You can be truly free and have your natural and inalienable rights respected and protected. You can claim your own assets for your own benefit. Like every other American, you simply need to know that you have that choice, and then you need to make it. It's that simple, like she told you before. So I give praise to Anoki said, who has drawn us with loving kindness. In the name of the Son, Yahweh, who brought this truth to you. Because I intended to bring you something different. It was still going to be good. But today we had a chance to see that Yahweh truly is good. Oh, taste and see that Yahweh is good. So the next time, Shalom.